Everybody. Today we're going to talk about, as you can see here, ECCE writing. It's going to be either a letter or an essay based on an extract from a newspaper. And here is the extract. And as you can see today, it's about public transportation. You see here that there isn't an S. It doesn't say transportations, so don't do that. Look at the words carefully. If it says transportation, it means there is no plural. Let's read it. It says many people who work and shop in the central area of the city drive cars to get there instead of using public transportation. And again, you see that there's no S, but then here is the S, buses, trains, etc. This causes traffic and pollution problems, and city officials want more people to take public transportation. And again, you see there's no S. You see that there's no S here and over there as well. So bear that in mind. Look at the extract very carefully. They want to find out from citizens what can be done to make more people leave their cars at home. So it is a campaign about using public transport more than using cars to get to the city centre, the central area of the city. Let's look at the question and let's look at the kind of brainstorming that you have to do. You see that the main words here are public transportation, and you have buses, trains, etc. Now, when it says etc., what other means of transport are public? Well, you have the metro. This causes traffic and pollution problems. Let's look at the word traffic. What traffic problems can you think of? Traffic jams. I write it here, for example, traffic jams where there are a lot of cars and they don't move because they are stuck in traffic. So you can have cars stuck in traffic. Instead of traffic jams, you can have there is a lot of traffic congestion. This is another word that you could use. Okay, traffic congestion. If we look at the pollution problems now, what kind of pollution problems? What you usually associate with cars is exhaust fumes, They pollute the air. Exhaust fumes pollute the air. And they may cause health problems to the citizens. The authorities, they want to find out what can be done so that people use public transportation more. The letter is about explaining how to increase the use of public transportation. And you have to explain why many people are not using public transportation now and describe specific actions that the city can take. Think about this. Think about how many parts there are in this particular letter that you have to write. Think about whether you're writing on your own or whether you're writing on behalf of somebody, your class, for example. But you cannot be writing on behalf of your class if it doesn't say anywhere in the task that there is a class involved. And who are you writing to? You're writing to dear city officials. Very quickly, let's look at the essay. It says, if you, okay, so it talks to you, could drive your own car or take public transportation to get to your school or workplace, which would you choose? What factors would affect your decision? And explain your choice. So when you see all these you and your in the task question, you have to wonder about whether you should be writing about citizens in general or about your own personal choice. So even though this is an essay, it's giving your own personal opinion about your own personal choice, but written in a very formal way. And what factors would affect your decision whether to take the car or the bus or the train, it's more difficult, isn't it? We're going to come back to the essay later, but let's start with the letter. Okay, so here is the letter. Okay, so you write to the Dear City officials. And the thing that you have to think about is how many parts are there to this letter? How many paragraphs? 2. Because it says explain, describe. So there are 2 things that you can do. The first is to explain why, and the other is to describe. And what in fact do you have to explain? You have to explain why many people are not using public transport, why they are not using public transport. So the first thing that you have to do is explain. So when you know that you have to explain, the next thing that you have to ask yourselves is, what expressions do I use to explain? For example, you can use there are many reasons why, first of all, secondly. So these are the sort of things that you can use when you explain. You have to explain the reasons why they prefer to take their car and not take public transport. So the other thing that you have to explain is why. And again, here you can think about all sorts of reasons why. For example, bus service is not regular. In other words, buses do not run frequently and you have to wait a long time at the bus stop. Another reason could be that there aren't enough bus stops around the city. So what's the consequence of this? I mean, so what if there aren't enough bus stops around the city? You may have to walk a long way from your bus stop to your house or work, so not near your destination. And you can explain it, for example, that some people may have to walk 10 minutes to get to a bus stop to take the bus. That's why they prefer the car. Another reason could be that bus routes do not cover the entire city, which is a bit similar to the one above. Okay, if bus routes do not cover the entire city, for example, if you live on the outskirts, it's very difficult to get to the center. Okay, so these are some of the reasons why. So why don't people use the public transport? You could explain either one or all 3 of them. Remember, you don't have enough time, but you have to brainstorm. Why don't people use public transport? Okay, the bus service is not regular, which is why people choose their cars, because they don't want to wait a long time at the bus stop. Another reason is that because there aren't enough bus stops around the city, people have to walk for 1 kilometer or 2 to get from their house to the bus stop. So these are the reasons why. Or you could say another reason why, finally, is that buses are too crowded or they are not clean enough. All these are serious reasons why people choose not to take public transport. The first part of the question, okay, let's go back, explain why many people are not using public transportation now. You explain there are many reasons why. Perhaps the most important is that bus services are not regular enough. As a result, people may have to wait a long time at the bus stop. Secondly, bus routes do not cover the entire city, so it is difficult for people living on the outskirts of the city to get to the city centre, which is why they may prefer to use their car instead. Another consideration is that buses get too crowded or they are not clean enough, which makes a bus journey not very pleasant. And now we have to move on to describe specific actions that the city can take to improve the situation. So these are the problems and you are supposed to give solutions. When you describe specific actions, you're giving solutions. So here you explain the problem. And down here, let's say, give solutions. But remember, the solutions, they are not to be given by what you can do you personally, okay, you decide not to take your car. It's what the city can take, the actions, the measures that the city can take. So we are talking about what the authorities can do. That's how you organize your essay, because in the first case, you're giving explanations of the problems, you're presenting the problems. In the second case, you're presenting the solutions. So let's have a look at the measures that could be taken. For example, one measure, in order to attract more the people that use the buses and the trains, what are they called? Huh? Passengers. Okay, so in order to attract more passengers, what could you do? You could have reduced bus fare. For whom? Reduced bus fare, you could say, for older people. And what are older people called? For senior citizens. Children. Students. Okay, so you could have those as measures that could be taken. The authorities could also organize campaigns. Organize campaigns that would inform the citizens about the benefits of using public transport, and at the same time about the benefits to the environment, both to themselves and to the environment. The authorities could organize car-free days, okay, where no cars are allowed, or they could sort of make the city centre a car-free zone. Not necessarily a pedestrian zone. I mean, obviously they could have more pedestrian zones, like, no types of vehicles are allowed. But a car-free zone would be an area where cars are not allowed, but buses are allowed. Or they could have huge car parks on the outskirts of the city, where the citizens leave their cars and then take a bus to the center. These are called park and ride schemes. But before we even get to that, even if you mention all these solutions, if you make all these suggestions about what the authorities can do, that's enough. Because again, you can organize these things. If we look at it here, there are a number of measures that the authorities can take to improve the situation. First of all, or perhaps the most important measure, is to reduce the bus fare, to make traveling by bus or train more attractive for senior citizens, children, or students. Secondly, they could also organize campaigns in order to inform citizens about the benefits of using public transport and how this will protect the environment. Finally, they could have car-free days, or perhaps a more effective measure would be to make the city centre a car-free zone where only public transportation is allowed. So in this way, if you think about it, you have organized your essay. But in order to organize, your letter, you have to start by understanding the task. So spend time understanding the task. Don't start writing straight away because of the impression that the task has made on you. Don't work with impressions. Analyze it. Look at the words. Explain. Explain what? Why many people are not using public transportation now. Okay, so in this particular case, you can even use the present continuous. They're not using buses or trains because this, that, and the other. And then describe specific actions. So present solutions, make suggestions, propose ways. The city, not you. So when you have understood this, then you can start writing your letter to dear city officials. All right, so you can go back and look at the notes. If we look at the essay now, I wouldn't do the essay if I were you, because as we said before, so it's about you, your own car, your school. Which would you choose? What factors would affect your decision? You can mention the same points as above, but you have to mention them from a very different perspective. Another factor that you have to take into consideration is the would effect. Would you choose? So it tells you, the task is telling you that you have to use second type conditional. I would choose the car for the following reasons. The factors that would affect my decision would be the comfort provided by the car, the convenience provided by the car, because I would be able to get to my destination in time. I wouldn't have to wait at the bus stop for the bus. Okay, so these factors would affect my decision. So perhaps the essay is not something I would decide to write because it's more difficult to organize it, it's more difficult to come up with ideas. Okay, the letter is much more straightforward. You explain why many people, you describe, it helps you a lot more. Another thing that it does, it organizes it, okay? It tells you, do this in the first main body paragraph, explain, do that in the other main body paragraph, describe. When you look at the essay, does it tell you what to do in the two main body paragraphs?